And so we're grateful that you are here also because he has a lot to share. And so, like I said, if you have any questions about the publications and things like that, it would be in his bio. And we have a few of his books that we brought in here. If any of you would like to buy this, because this would be part of fundraising for his projects, we have a few copies that you could sell, and we could make him sign also. So that's it for now, and then like I said, this reflection conversation, we will leave it up to Paring Bert to manage and do as he wishes. So again, thank you, and we hope that we will make this as interactive and as participatory as possible.
Good afternoon. Maraming salamat po. I'm Father Albert Alejo, that you call me Paring Bert. Was that Pari o Pare?
Pari.
Pareho na rin yun. Magkasama na yung Pari, priest, and Pare, friend, in one person. So that it's easy to remember me during elections. Okay. Normally, I present a PowerPoint presentation, but maybe we can reverse it. At this point, you're not totally unaware of what's happening in the country. Can we just throw questions immediately? And then let's see how we can touch on some of them and probably add a few, and probably maybe on some other subtopics, maybe I can say, sorry, I cannot answer that. But offhand, what would be your expected discussion?
Can you tell us how you see President Duterte, who's a Davaoeño like you? How do you see President Duterte?
Okay, thank you. Come. How do I see President Duterte? I lived in Davao. First time I was in Davao was 1980, as I was a young novice. No beard yet. And then I lived in Davao, teaching in the high school, 1985 to 87. That was the transition between martial law and the people power. And then after finishing my studies in London, I was assigned in Mindanao, particularly Davao. I stayed 10 years in Ateneo de Davao, teaching in the graduate school, and studies anthropology, and then doing other things. I'll say something more about that. After that, I was assigned in Zamboanga for 5 years, but I frequented Davao also at least once a month. And even when I transferred to Manila, until now, I have a project in Davao. So that would be, maybe later on I'll say something more about it. That's the background.
Can you give the background of Davao, that they're saying it's really free of PJK, free of drugs? Is that really true? And it's the most peaceful city in the country?
Okay, we'll say something about Duterte and...
Peaceful city in the country?
Okay, we'll say something about Duterte and Davao.
Curious, since you mentioned development studies, just your perspective on development in the Philippines, post-development, and any approaches that the countries or the people take towards development, economic development.
Okay, I hope to touch on that also. Thank you.
Also, maybe maybe also the ratings of Duterte.
The ratings of
as of,
Duterte.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
How's the comprehensive economic development of the country like this point in time?
I seem to be Bloomberg and Al Jazeera.
All rolled into one.
All rolled into one. Yes.
Can you talk about like the constitutional convention assembly that they're trying to do, and then the changes in the constitution?
Federalism.
Federalism. They talked about how there can be 100% foreign ownership of industries in the Philippines after that change in the constitution.
Pwede ba tatlo? When was the first time you met the president in Davao, if you have a chance? And what was your impression? when was the last? How is Matubato doing right now? Don't disclose the location. 3, how well did you know that Matubato is telling the truth? And what are your evidence, if there are any? And last, pahabol. Why do you think President Duterte is enjoying such popular support? And why do you think he is so well entrenched that right now you almost can do anything? What did you do to deserve and have enjoyed this overwhelming, mass popular support? Thank you.
And we're just up to 5 p.m.
What do you think is what do you think is the real ideological beliefs of Duterte?
Duterte. Okay.
Yeah.
So Duterte.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe we can start with that. I think he has been saying that. His formula is, I'll take care of peace and order, you take care of development. So I'll make sure you can walk safely on the streets, and then you can start putting up your investments. So in other words, he would say, I'm not an economist, don't expect me to give you a blueprint of economic ways forward.
So who will do the economic
Yeah,
development?
private sector, the businessman, etc. Alright. Okay, yes.
How strong is the movement in the Philippines against human rights violation?
Thank you for asking. Okay, I hope to touch that also. Wow, it's a lot. And I suppose, what's the role of artists?
Yes.
Now, okay, given that, I hope to go through my presentation and probably along the way, we can touch on some of these things. And if I did that touch, raise it up again. Can we?
Turn off the
Okay, all right. I don't mind you not seeing me. Anyway, so may I present to you what I prepared. Stop the Killing, Start the Healing, with special focus on people's response and some Christian response to the war on drugs.
Kailangan na ng ilaw.
Yeah.
Just to move.
Okay, just I hope to cover many of those things that you mentioned. One is personal notes, including my own background. How am I connected with Davao? And some notes on President Duterte and suppose Davao. And then the people's response, especially those who are critical, and in particular, some of the church's responses. Number one, personal note, where am I coming from? My father was from Bulacan. He went to Lanao and met Cinderella from Bukidnon. And the product of their love affair was myself. Can you come closer so I don't have to shout?
Baby.
So, I'm mestizo. So my father is Tagalog, Severino Alejo, and my mother is Cinderella Eduave. And they met in Mindanao, and I was the firstborn. When I was 9 months old, we moved to Bulacan. And there, I studied in the public school, very poor. And in 1972, martial law was declared. I was already in second year high school, joining the protest movements. And even in Bulacan, I had experiences of killings and violence, and especially during martial law. So, experience of martial law, as a matter of fact, my teacher in Filipino, who was an activist, was killed immediately after the declaration. It was during this time that I realized my vocation, also because inspired by scouting, etc. My first year in college was in UST as a biochemistry student, but then while reading the books in the library, the Jesuits write books, fight for justice and work with the poor, only to realize later that the Ateneo was the rival of Lasalle. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, I joined the Jesuits, did my studies in philosophy, theology, etc. And I myself fulfilled that image of producing a number of books. And in the process, I had different assignments. I worked with trade unions in Manila as a director of the Archdiocese of Manila Labor Center. Then later on, I was assigned to Mindanao after my studies. So one of my works was with indigenous peoples. So as you can see, I had to join the rituals, offering guns instead of just flowers for peace negotiation. So I was a member of the government team negotiating with the communists. And aside from Davao, I was also assigned to Zamboanga, especially during the time of the Zamboanga siege. I talked to Commander Malik and negotiated for the release of Ofana. So just to drive home the point that I had some experiences of the violence, not just in Davao, but also in Mindanao. And I gained some friends. This is just for photo op. My Muslim friend said, "Father, take a photograph with our mother." Because Father, you look like our commander, Commander Malik. And one thing was good. I made friends with Muslim leaders, and part of our project was the repainting of mosques riddled with bullets. I had some studies also in human trafficking and all this informal economy of conflict, because the drugs is connected with smuggling, with human trafficking, with arms deal, and you cannot just sell drugs without attending to smuggling. Okay? Yeah, you cannot just kill the drug users and then allow the Bureau of Customs to keep on not paying attention to what goes on inside the X-rays. And wait a minute. This in Davao, I also founded Amuma Cancer Support Group Foundation. So it's a support group for cancer patients and caregivers, especially women with breast cancer and cervical cancer, etc. Until now, they're very active, even though I'm not there anymore. Along the way, I published a number of books, as I've shown to you. One is on Mount Apo, on politics and culture and environment. This one is on EHEM. EHEM is our advocacy against corruption. I can see what you're doing. Sana makuha ka sa tingin. Sana makuha ka sa tingin kahit wala nakatingin. Sana makuha ka sa tingin kahit wala nakatingin sapagkat may nakatingin. Di ba?
Amen. Yes.
Ano?
Yes.
Yung butiki. Di ba? The bird's eye view always looks from up, down. The worm's eye view always looks from down, up. But the butiki, the lizard, can be on the ceiling looking down, can be from the floor looking up, or from the wall looking sideways. The lizard can also be under the table. Your under the table deal, he also sees, and he says, all right, okay. So that's what's called EHEM. And part of the EHEM was, for many years, we were monitoring the Bureau of Customs. And one issue that we discovered was that in Davao City alone, there is this X-ray. That thing is an X-ray machine that can scan through the whole truck and van. It can see through the metal and can reveal what is exactly inside. Now that one big X-ray machine costs 250 million pesos. And since 2009, it has not been used. It was bought precisely to scan, to check what is inside, whether it's drugs or luxury cars. But now, until now, it has not been used. So you don't know what else has gone through without notice.
Port of Davao.
Yes. But the realization is this just one of the 30 units of X-ray machines bought by Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in 2006 for 7.953 billion pesos bought from the Chinese. I don't know whether we have paid for it or not, but it's certainly not generating funds.
Is it located all over the islands?
They're distributed in Subic, in Batangas, in one in Davao. Yeah, but according to the Commission on Audit, the whole thing has only 14% utilization rate. That's right. So that's why you'll not be surprised that even in Davao you capture some cocaine occasionally. So I felt like I joined the right people by being a Jesuit, very concerned with the issues of the day, and yet after more than 30 years, I feel sometimes questioning whether is it worth it? There's still so many poor people. And by poor, according to this scoring, is meant you have $1 earning a day. I suppose even if you have $2 a day, you're still poor. But in this kind of 46 pesos per day, you have 23.9 million Filipinos who are poor. It's very disconcerting. So I think I'm touching on your question. It's not just poverty but hunger, and paradoxically, there is economic improvement, apparently, in figures. But the development is not exactly trickling down. Yeah. So you have a very wide and well-maintained inequality until now. The Gini coefficient of the measure of inequality is the same. We may have an increase in gross domestic product, but the distance between the poor is practically the same. Okay. Now it's disconcerting. It's in a way it helps you understand why there is a tremendous amount of longing for a different kind of government, a different kind of leadership. Now, especially if you look at Mindanao, you may have overall a national gross domestic product which is increasing, and yet the distribution is unequal, especially if you add geography. So that dark portion is the measure of economic transaction per square kilometer, according to the measurement of the World Bank. And you can see that much of the economic transactions are heavily concentrated in Metro Manila, a little bit in the Cebu area, and then also a little bit in Davao. But the rest of the country is still very much lagging behind. And so you can partly understand why there would be an appreciation for the need for welcoming a president who comes from that neglected geographic region, right?
Is the other dark part in Mindanao is the Cagayan de Oro?
Cagayan de Oro, but very far from the Metro Manila. just take note, if you consider the existence of a national bookstore as an indication of development, only last year that we had one national bookstore in Zamboanga City, the first national bookstore in the Zamboanga Peninsula, from Dipolog down to Basilan and Tamitan. Whereas in Manila, you have national bookstores almost for every mall, and then you also have fully books and power books and second-hand books. So it's all tilted against many regions. And that's why I would say, in terms of federalism, you really have to study very hard whether federalism answers this question of unequal distribution. Maybe in theory, but not necessarily. Okay. You still have to study. So many of these problems seem to be invisible, not being talked about, etc. Now, some people say, pag walang mahirap, pag walang kurap, maraming mahirap. Kurap. So we still have a great number of problems. Thank God you are here in the United States where there is no corruption.
There is.
Now, so I've been busy with indigenous peoples, with dialogue with communists, with Muslims. I'm not a very, very major actor. I don't claim to be that, but I was busy with that. And the problem is that very recently, I was moved to Rome in September, but before that, I was busy adding another concern, which is the extrajudicial killings. And maybe I'll tell you how it works. So in this situation, you can understand the longing for a different kind of leader, and president in particular. So there is a longing for a different kind of president, one who is coming from the Metro Manila. So that's a big hope. So probably that would answer why somebody from the outside of the center would be a welcome thing, especially somebody who is strong and who apparently believes in what he's doing. And never mind if he's terror, maybe that's what we need. And the self-definition of leadership by Duterte goes like, a leader must be a terror to the few who are evil in order to protect the lives and well-being of the many who are good. So there is a moral discourse, the moral characterization of the fight. And apparently for many people who got tired of the elite democracy, the prim and proper, yellow candidates like Maro has, we're tired of that. Let's give a chance to somebody who is coarse in language, who speaks our jokes and, of course, metaphors, etc. So maybe he's our hope. After all, he's not just coarse in language, but he managed to improve Davao City. And we can discuss for a lengthy period of time the different developments that have become visible in Davao. As I told you, my first acquaintance with Davao was when I was a young novice in 1980. Together with the rest of Mindanao, there was plenty of killings and poverty. 1985-87, that was the transition between martial law and the people power of Cory Aquino. And then when I came back to Davao, Duterte was already 2 years as mayor, and we hear about the killings and Davao Death Squad, and some of my students were gone from the classroom because their parents have fled to another city to avoid the killings. Every day during the 85-87, there were killings. In 2000, the year 2000, Davao has improved a lot. I must say, 911 is very efficient. There's a anti-smoking ban, and the taxi drivers will give you the chains, exact chains, unlike in many parts of the world. You know? So there was an improvement, but at the same time, there was this more than rumors of killings. And officially, there's a count of 1,400 unresolved killings in Davao, not to mention the missing, those who were thrown into the sea. Part of the development was also the Ateneo de Davao, where I taught for 10 years in the graduate school, 2 years in the high school. So I must say, I personally have seen the development of Davao, but at the same time, I am disturbed by the authoritarian approach, by the fact that Duterte is the mayor and the vice mayor is his daughter. And when he became president, the daughter becomes the mayor and the son becomes the vice mayor. There seems to be a monopoly of power. Yeah. So, and I could see the indigenous peoples begging, especially during Christmas time, and the government would pick them up from the mountains, bring them down to the city to beg, and I thought that was not development. So, anyway, and the real issue was violation of human rights. Recently, Duterte said, well, this is a very clear formula. If you want to develop, you have to kill. You cannot develop without killing. Because some people are just obstacles to development, and you cannot rely on the courts to prosecute them, and so might as well deal with. He would kill 100,000, and he will make the fish in Manila Bay fat by throwing cadavers. Sure enough, in the first 7 months of his presidency, the official report of the police would amount to about a little less than 1,000 killings a month. Take note that during martial law of Marcos, the average unresolved killings was 250 killings a year. Now we have 1,000 killings, unresolved killings a month, and mostly very, very poor people. Now it's the figures are divided into one is the police would admit of having killed a number of things, maybe two-fifths, saying we went to their houses but they fought back instead of surrendering, and they are armed, and so we have to protect ourselves. In the process, we kill them. The rest, we don't know who are doing the killing. Maybe vigilantes, maybe the drug lords killing their own assets, lest they become witnesses. Now, you may wonder, what is happening? If you say that these killings are done by the police in legitimate police operation, normally according to the law, there should also be investigation. It doesn't mean that the 3/5 which are under investigation means that those should be investigated, but the police killings need not be investigated. They need to be investigated. We might as well check what is happening, what is the result of your investigation. What about the death under investigation? Has there been investigation? I suppose maybe there is, but we wonder who has been jailed. But in Davao, nobody has been jailed out of those all kinds of killings. And what is disturbing is that in those killings, a good number of children who cannot be drug lords, who cannot be pushers, probably not the drug users even, are part of the casualties, and you have statistics of children being collateral damage in the war on drugs. By the way, the word war on drugs means a struggle to curb this problem of drug addiction. But you can say, but if you treat it as a health problem, then you can say, we are doing all our best to address the disease, the sickness. You can say fight drugs, but if you say war, then you are using the metaphor of war. And therefore, collateral damage, it becomes very acceptable. And the killing and the death would be a normal consequence because you have already turned it as war rather than a campaign against, right? Now, incidentally, because of this, one positive, accordingly, positive effect is that many people surrender, and now our prisons are crowded. Although some of them surrendered because they are afraid, of course. For example, if you were using drugs until 2 years ago, you might be afraid of being still in the list. So sometimes you surrender also. But that doesn't guarantee that if you register yourself as a former drug user, your life is spared. That's not a guarantee. Some of those who have been killed actually have just registered themselves. And in the meantime, this is the picture of a good number of our prisons. I wonder how we can help. No? Now, in this kind of situation, there's an enigma. It's paradoxical that Duterte still maintains a high rating. As a matter of fact, there are even religious groups, both Catholics and Protestants, who apparently not just tolerate or condone, but even blesses this whole effort. For example, there's this priest. He says, we agree with the president because there's no other solution. We realize that there is a problem of drugs and it is big, but we have not done anything. So who are we to stop him for his style of addressing the drugs? And he was asked, but what do you think of the sanctity of life? Oh, every life is sacred. But if you do it scientifically, what is 6,000 or 7,000 considering that we have 100 million Filipinos? So with 100 million Filipinos, 7,000 or even 10,000 would be nothing if this is for the good of America. Now, you may find that a little coarse, but probably many people would have that kind of logic. Yeah? For the sake of the many, then you can sacrifice a few. And if you consider it scientifically, it will be a small proportion. Even if you consider 7,000 or 10,000 against the backdrop of 100 million. And so the Monsignor says, I think deep within the heart of the president is a good intention. You have also the healing priest, who is proud to have given blessing to President Duterte, and even Brother Eddie giving blessing to Duterte. And our very own Jesuit president of Ateneo de Davao, Joel Tabora, has been very supportive of President Duterte. Yeah, despite the killing, well, he believes in himself and he doesn't mind being called a killer. And even if he promised to end the drugs issue within 3 to 6 months, And he says, I failed, but give me more time, I will finish it. People accept it. So, but is he really, but maybe the president is just saying it, but he's not really directing the killing. Maybe they're abusive. There's an abuse of interpretation of the police. Is Duterte himself really a killer? Well, he says, well, as a matter of fact, I killed when I was 16 years old. And am I part of the Davao death squad? He says, yes. And it's okay. There's even, I don't know if it's, how far this video game is popular, but there's a video game, a computer game called Duterte with General Bato, and you score high when you kill a lot of people along the street. So the visual is moving, and then you have somebody in front, and then your score is according to how many people you shoot down. And to July came the photojournalists. They continued for many until now. By August and September, there was a new face that emerged, which is the face of Edgar Matubato. Thanks for asking about Edgar Matubato. Who is Edgar Matubato? He, according to his story, he's one of the members of the original Davao Death Squad. When Cory Aquino took over in 1987-88, she declared a revolutionary government and she appointed mayors and vice mayors. Duterte was appointed as vice mayor of Davao City. In 1989, there was a regular election and Duterte won as mayor. Immediately, he created the Davao Death Squad. The Davao Death Squad is a team of a small group of killers whose task was primarily to execute the suspected drug addicts, drug pushers, cell phone snatchers, rapists, and other criminals in society. So the whole point is to cleanse Davao City of the scalawags. And Edgar Matubato, by his own account, says that he was part of that original team, and along the way he has killed at least 200 or probably 300, including breaking the chest so that when they throw the body into the sea, the bodies will not float. And for 7,000 a month. Sometimes they would get some additional reward money.
Pesos?
Yes, pesos. And so he decided to tell his story because he had a spiritual conversion and he was feeling guilty. And apparently the spirits of his victims have been trying to urge him to move, to seek for justice, by telling the truth. And so it is his vow, his commitment to tell the truth at his expense, without immunity, without a witness protection program, to tell the truth that includes himself as the accused. So when he filed the case in the ombudsman, he confessed to the sins of the Davao Death Squad, and he enumerated the members of the Davao Death Squad whom he knew, and he included himself. Because he said, I am a great sinner, I killed so many people, but I was part of a group led by the mayor, and we need to do justice to our victims. Because at a certain point, they realized that they were already killing many innocent people. At one point, they attacked a man in his house, but the mother embraced the son, and they killed even the mother. At a certain point, they assaulted a dormitory of 4 girls because they heard that they were using drugs. Apparently, some of them were raped by the police before they were killed, and he felt what has happened to us. So when he wanted to retire, he was tortured to force him to admit to a crime he did not do. And to cut the long story short, he moved out of Davao and tried to find a way to tell the story in public. And we managed to bring him to Senator Laila de Lima, who opened a Senate hearing, and Matubato was able to tell his story. It was suppressed immediately, but at least the foreign media captured the story, the BBC, Al Jazeera, New York Times, and even ABS-CBN, GMA, and Inquirer. And so that started the whole movement, which included the recruitment of Attorney Savio to the right. Because Attorney Savio was from Cagayan de Oro. When he saw Matubato on TV, he said, "I'm a criminal lawyer. I know this guy is telling the truth. I would lawyer for him." And from that time on, we got connected, and he became full-time supporter of the self-confessed criminals. After that, another witness came out in the person of a high-ranking police officer, SPO3 Arturo Las Cañas, who was the designer of many of the killings, the assassinations of the Davao death squads. And he was getting an allowance of 100,000 pesos a month. And at a certain point, they became entrepreneurial. Sometimes when they kill somebody, they would say, "Oh, it's a big drug lord," and they would get a big reward money for that. But his story was very touching because he killed 2 of his brothers who were using drugs, and only to realize that
rugby. Those are the generals of the German opening, and I am here at the St. Elizabeth Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, and I am interviewing Father Bert, Paring Bert who spoke here about more than an hour about his project about my question is what are the challenges? Don't you feel any danger? Like trying to put up the group about
as I've been saying, I stand as witness to the development of Davao. I've seen how it goes from being a battlefield. And now it is a very livable city. I told my brother we were looking for a livable city. At the same time, I also disturbed that the killings have been the foundation of the development of Davao. Looks like it's getting out of hand nation. And so we also have to acknowledge the danger posed by this excess of brutality, That's why we need to be aware. There are good things happening. There are also ominous dark clouds. There are also dark clouds ahead, and we need to be a source of light, a source of hope. And in this process, I can only appeal to the humanity of our fellow people. Kapwa tao tayo, kapwa Pilipino. So there's nothing to look at here. I hope that we can all awaken to our dignity, our brotherhood and sisterhood, and being fellow Filipinos.
Okay, this is meet with President Duterte. What are you going to tell him?
I would like to tell Mr. President, I know deep within you have goodness in your heart. You may also have some wounds. Your heart you know your ways are unconventional. I can easily imagine that you want to be the legitimate president of our country, developing the economy and really serving the poor, challenging the rich, challenging the corrupt, all without the king. I can easily imagine that you can do it without the killing. Please stop the killing. Please stop expressing the wounds in your heart and taking this pain from your heart to our country. Because you have suffered.
Thank you, sir.
And I assure you that your political will and public support developing the country to envision it, but without the killing. It is possible.
Thank you very much, Father Beck, for Then my regards to Tony Ahero.
And now we do the pilau on the job.
And God bless.
And God bless.